Simcha, celebration, Simcha, Simcha, celebration of life.
Shalom, welcome to Simcha, a celebration of life. I'm your host, Eitan Berger. Two Orthodox rabbis, Berel Wein, the founder and director of Destiny Foundation, and Warren Goldstein, the chief rabbi of South Africa, have joined together to offer 9 essays about rabbis who lived in Lithuania. The book, entitled The Legacy, presents a moral and spiritual vision for the Jewish people. Providing a glimpse into the world of these sages, the two authors outline their ideas and deeds, or as they describe it, the values and ethics by which Jews should live.
One of the great things that the book itself teaches is the ability to deal with people, to deal with criticism, and somehow to see the big picture and not the small petty things that always interfere.
And commitment to principle, and that's one of the things that comes out in the book, is that the people that we write about and their worldview is a worldview which is based on a commitment to truth. And if you have a truth and you have your principles, you stick by those to almost heroic extent. When you think this book is a book about heroism as well. The heroism of people who rebuilt the yeshiva world after the destruction of the Holocaust. And to do that, it's one thing to deflect criticism of people, who are sniping from the sidelines. It's another thing to be able to rebuild one's life and a yeshiva and a whole way of life and the Torah learning that they did after the destruction of the Holocaust. That's why this photograph, which is on the cover of the book, it's really a picture of 3 heroes here on the cover of the book. You have here Rav Mordechai Katz, who refounded the Telz Yeshiva in Cleveland, and you have in the middle Rav Aaron Kotler, who founded the Lakewood Yeshiva in Lakewood, New Jersey, and then Rav Yitzhak Ruderman, who founded the Ner Yisrael Yeshiva in Baltimore. And they were all Holocaust survivors of one kind or another. Rav Mordechai Katz, and I have this photograph on the wall of my office because it's inspiring when you think about their heroism, and this is also a book about their heroism. Rav Mordechai Katz, his wife and 10 children were murdered in the Holocaust. And in fact, he left Europe in 1940. There were him and his brother-in-law, Rav Elia Meir-Bloch. No one knew what was coming. And they smuggled out via Siberia to get to America. They didn't want to go. In fact, the way my Rosh Hashiva told me the story was that, it was almost drew straws. Who would be the ones who would have to go to America to bring the yeshiva across? So that they were going to go there, raise the funds to bring the whole yeshiva and everyone across. And by the time they got there, they got news that Telz in Europe had been decimated and destroyed and everybody had been murdered. And there was nothing left. There was no one to bring over. And then, you know what it takes then to rebuild a yeshiva, having lost all of that in a strange country, you don't know the culture, you don't know the language, it's heroic. And then inside the book is published the full photograph where those 3 are walking with 2 young yeshiva students walking next to them. One is Rabbi Tanzer and Rabbi Goldstein. This, taken in the 1950s in Cleveland, Ohio. They learned by these heroes. So then they rebuilt the yeshiva. And so this is just a South African story. From their heroism came Rabbi Tanzer, who established the Yeshiva College campus in Johannesburg, and then Rabbi Goldstein, who established the Yeshiva Gedola that trained and gave ordination to many rabbis who are in very important positions in the community. So what's so inspiring about their lives and what we've tried to capture in the book is the sense of their heroism.
One of the things that both Rabbi Wein and Rabbi Goldstein mentioned is that there's a great heritage from Lithuanian Rabbonim, Lithuanian Rosh Hashivas, that transfers all the way to our generation. Now, Rabbi Goldstein, for example, who was the mentor of Rabbi Goldstein, he studied in the Telz Yeshiva, and his Rosh Hashiva was Rabbi Gifter. He was so proud of being a Talmud, a student of Rabbi Gifter, that on his monument, it's not written that he was a great rabbi. Of course, Rabbi Goldstein was, but he writes that he was a Talmud of Telz and a Talmud of Rab Gifter, because he felt that the transition from Lithuania through the Telz yeshiva all the way down to him was a prominent aspect of his life. And the Lithuanian people, especially those who learned in Slobodka, they believed in godless ha'adam, which means the greatness of a person. And they always tried to teach that every person can accomplish a tremendous amount. And I will give you an example. There is a medrash that says that at the end of creation, God said, V'hine toiv ma'oid. It's very, very good. And the medrash says, ma'oid is Adam. Ma'oid is Mem Aleph Daled, and Adam is Aleph Daled Mem, the same letters. So Rabbi Hutner, who was a Talmud in Slobodka, said, you know what that means? Adam is ma'oid, endless, great. He could accomplish anything if he sets his mind to it. Anything can be measured except the potential of man. The potential of man is limitless. And all the Lithuanian, especially the Slobodka, Rosh Yeshivas, they believed that if you can give over to a student the wherewithal so that he's positive about himself and positive about the world, he could accomplish anything.
In our new series entitled The Gift of Change, Rabbi Shishler explains how when we open our minds and explore the deeper meaning of life, in other words, when we bring change into our lives, it should not be as daunting as many of us find it to be.
Change, they say that it is inevitable and it happens to all of us. Some of us welcome change, some of us are afraid of change, some of us live for the opportunity to change. And whichever way you look at it, it's part of the human experience. You cannot be a human being without having either the opportunity or the challenge of change. The sages teach us that the great gift that God gave to humans, unlike animals, is that we walk upright. And when you walk upright, even when you're walking on the ground, you always have at least a peripheral view of the heavens. You know, an animal sort of walks head down, always looking at the ground, always looking at its feet, always looking at what it's going to eat or what it's going to drink. Human beings, unfortunately, not so much in urban areas, but we're designed to be able to look upwards. And the greatness of being a human is that not only do we physically look upwards, but we are wired to always look at how can I progress, how can I transcend, how can I change. One of the greatest things that we teach in Judaism is to look for the opportunity to change. Think of it this way. Every year when it comes to Rosh Hashanah and it's the beginning of a new year, there's that theme of change, of rejecting the negative of the past and undertaking things for the future. But the truth is, it's not only once a year that we think about change. In fact, we have a calendar that follows the moon. It's a calendar that's about change. Every single night you look up at the moon and you will see it somewhat differently to how it looked last night and to how it will look tomorrow night. It's constantly in a state of either growth or waning. Sometimes it looks like it's not even there at all. Sometimes it's bright and beautiful. The change of the lunar cycle, the change of month to month, is supposed to inspire us to also look to change, to look to be different to how I was last month, last week, perhaps even yesterday. In Hebrew, the word that we use for a month is the word chodesh, which is a direct relation to the word chadash, which means new, or chidush, which means renewal. So when God came to Moses while the Jews were still in Egypt and gave him instruction to make a calendar, that coincided with the instruction to make a Jewish nation. That coincided with the birth of our people. And that became the first instruction, so in a sense the most fundamental instruction of being Jewish. And when God said this to Moses, he said to him, HaChodesh hazeh lochem Rosh Chodashim. This month will be for you the beginning of all cycles of months. And maybe a more philosophical way of reading it is, God said to Moses, HaChodesh, this idea of renewal, this idea of always having the opportunity to change, to become something fresh, to reinvent yourself, Lachem, this is my gift to you, which is highly significant because right at the beginning of the birth of the Jewish people, at a time when they were living as slaves, their parents had been slaves, their grandparents had been slaves, they'd been locked in for 210 years into a way of thinking that this is who we are, this is what we're capable of, this is what locks us down, and there are no alternatives. The most important message and the most fundamental message that they needed to hear was, that's not true. Who you were, who your parents were, what your legacy was, that does not have to determine who you will be and what you will become. In fact, on the contrary, your aspiration, if you are to break out of slavery and become a free people, your aspiration has to be, I want to change. How can I change?
Sadly, we've come to the end of this week's episode of Simcha. Thank you very much for joining us. If you'd like to catch up on any of the previous week's episodes, log on to our website, www.spiritsister.co.za. From myself, Eitan Berger, and all of us here at Simcha, have a great week and goodbye.